The signature she never questioned. The night my wife told me I was nothing without her, she had no idea that the company she called hers had been surviving. Because of me, she stood behind the marble desk in her penthouse office, wearing the same expression she used whenever she closed a billion-dollar deal. Cold, certain, untouchable. You have two choices, Ethan, Victoria said. Accept the divorce quietly or make this ugly. I stared at the papers between us. You already decided? She gave a small smile. I decided months ago. I looked at her carefully. Months. Yes. And you never thought I deserved to know? You weren't involved in the business. That sentence hurt more than I expected. Not because it was true, because she believed it was true. For 6 years, I had been the man standing behind her, the man reviewing contracts at midnight, the man catching financial errors before investors saw them, the man secretly covering payroll when one of her largest clients delayed payment. But Victoria had never known the full story. She believed she had built her empire alone. She didn't know that 3 years before our wedding, I had quietly created a private investment company under another name. And she certainly didn't know that her first major investor had been one of my companies. Why are you smiling? She asked. I hadn't realized I was. I'm not. You are. I was just thinking. About what? I pushed the divorce papers back toward her. You're right. Her eyebrows lifted. I'm right? Yes. She looked almost disappointed that I wasn't fighting. You're not going to argue? No. Beg. No. Ask me to reconsider? I shook my head. Victoria leaned against the desk. I expected more from you. So did I. For the first time, her confidence weakened. Ethan, I'll sign. She watched me pick up the pen. But before I signed, I asked one question. Do you remember the first investor who believed in your company? She frowned. Of course. Do you remember his name? Richard Cole. I smiled. Interesting. What does that mean? Nothing. I signed. Victoria watched silently. When I stood, she said, Where will you go? Somewhere I can finally be myself. She laughed softly. You don't have to pretend anymore, Ethan. I stopped at the door. I never was pretending. She didn't answer. I walked out, but the moment the elevator doors closed, my phone rang. Mr. Carter, my assistant Daniel said, The board is assembled. Good. Should I tell them you're coming? I looked at my reflection in the elevator mirror. For the first time in 6 years, I said, I'm ready. The following morning, Victoria arrived at Carter Dynamics expecting another ordinary board meeting. Instead, every director was already seated, and beside the chairman was a man she had never seen before. Daniel stood. Everyone, I'd like to introduce Mr. Ethan Carter. Victoria froze. Her face lost its color. Why is my husband here? The chairman slowly looked toward her. Your husband? Ethan smiled. Ex-husband? Victoria stared at him. Then the chairman placed a folder on the table. Victoria, before we discuss today's agenda, there's something you need to know. She opened it. Inside were documents, investment agreements, acquisition records, private ownership certificates, and one signature appeared again and again. Ethan Carter. Victoria's breathing changed. No. The chairman looked at her. Your company has been under financial protection from Carter Holdings for years. Victoria looked at Ethan. You. He didn't answer. She turned another page. Her eyes widened. The final document showed the original funding structure of the company. The largest shareholder wasn't Victoria. It was Ethan, and beneath his name was the date of the first investment, 7 years earlier, before they had even met. Victoria whispered the only question she could think of. Who are you? Ethan looked directly into her eyes. The man you thought you never needed. He closed the folder. And the reason your empire still exists. The man behind the curtain. Victoria refused to believe it. This is ridiculous. The chairman didn't react. You can verify every document. She looked at Ethan. You forged these. No. You manipulated the board. No. You've been planning this? Ethan leaned back. No, Victoria. You planned the divorce. I simply stopped hiding. Her jaw tightened. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have listened? Yes. He gave her a quiet look. No. The room became silent. Victoria looked toward Daniel. You knew? Daniel hesitated. I've known for years. Her eyes widened. Everyone knew? Not everyone, Ethan said. Just the people who needed to. Victoria stood. This is insane. Ethan remained seated. Your company almost collapsed 4 years ago. I fixed it. You almost fired 200 employees. I saved the company. You did. He paused. But you didn't do it alone. Victoria looked away. Ethan continued. You wanted to sell your software division. I had no choice. I bought the division through a private company. Victoria stared at him. That was you? Yes. You were the anonymous buyer? Yes. Why? Because I knew you would regret selling it. Her voice became quieter. You could have told me. I tried. When? Every time I suggested slowing down. Every time I warned you about an investor. Every time I told you not to trust Marcus. Victoria suddenly looked up. Marcus. Ethan nodded. Your CFO. Victoria's expression changed. Don't bring Marcus into this. Why? Because he's loyal. Ethan looked at her. You're sure? She didn't answer. That silence told him enough. That evening, Victoria confronted Marcus in his office. You knew Ethan owned the company? Marcus looked surprised. What? Don't lie to me. He slowly closed his laptop. I don't know what you're talking about. Victoria placed a copy of the ownership documents on his desk. Marcus stared at them. Then he laughed. You finally found out. Victoria's stomach dropped. Found out what? Marcus stood. Your husband isn't the only person who's been keeping secrets. What does that mean? Marcus walked toward the window. You think Ethan stayed behind you because he loved you? Victoria said nothing. He stayed because he was protecting an investment. That isn't true. Then ask him why his holding company has been buying your competitors. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Why? Marcus smiled. Because he's preparing to own your entire industry. Victoria drove home in silence. She found Ethan sitting alone in the dark living room. You're buying our competitors. He looked up. Some of them. Why? Because the market is changing. You're trying to destroy my company. No. Then what are you doing? Protecting what I built. Victoria froze. What you built? Ethan stood. I built the foundation. You built a public company. She stared at him. Then why did you let me believe I did everything? Because you needed to believe in yourself. Her voice cracked. And now I don't know if I recognize the woman I married. Victoria looked down. For the first time, she didn't have an answer. Then Ethan's phone rang. He checked the screen. His expression immediately changed. Who is it? Victoria asked. He didn't answer. He walked toward the balcony. Daniel, he said. A pause. Then Ethan's face hardened. What? Victoria watched him carefully. What happened? Ethan ended the call. He turned toward her. Someone accessed the private accounts. Whose? Mine. Can they take your money? Ethan shook his head. No. Then what? He looked at her. They weren't trying to steal my money. What were they trying to steal? My identity. The betrayal. The next morning, Ethan's entire private financial network went offline. Not because it had been attacked. Because someone had used internal credentials. Someone who knew exactly where to look. Daniel placed a laptop on the table. 3 access attempts. Ethan studied the records. Who? We don't know. Find out. Victoria stood nearby. You think this is Marcus? I don't know. But he knew about you. So did several people. Victoria folded her arms. Are you saying I did this? Ethan looked at her. No, but you don't trust me. I don't trust the situation. She looked hurt. You spent years protecting me without trusting me. Those aren't the same thing. Maybe they are. Ethan said nothing. Victoria walked away. That afternoon, The board suspended several executives after irregular transactions were discovered. Then came the worst news. A major investor announced they were withdrawing. Victoria entered the boardroom. If they pull out, the stock will fall. The chairman nodded. How much? Enough to trigger a chain reaction. Victoria looked toward Ethan. You can stop it. I can. Then do it. Ethan shook his head. No. She stared at him. Why? Because if I save you again, you'll never learn why this happened. Her expression hardened. This isn't a lesson. No. Ethan looked at the financial report. It's a warning. By evening, the company's valuation had dropped dramatically. News channels were already reporting rumors. CEO Victoria Carter facing investor revolt. Anonymous financial crisis hits Carter Dynamics. Victoria watched the headlines from her office. For the first time in years, she felt powerless. Then Marcus entered. We can still recover. How? Sell the technology division. Victoria immediately shook her head. No, it's our fastest option. No. Marcus lowered his voice. Your husband wants that division anyway. Victoria stared at him. What do you know? Marcus smiled. More than you think. He placed a document on the desk. Sign this. What is it? A transfer agreement. Victoria read it, then looked up. This gives you control of the division. Temporarily. No. Marcus's smile disappeared. You're running out of time. Victoria pushed the document away. Leave. Marcus turned toward the door, then stopped. You should ask Ethan what happened to your father. Victoria froze. My father? Marcus walked out. That night, Victoria found an old storage box. Her father had died 8 years earlier. She had never understood why his company collapsed so suddenly. Inside the box was an old letter. One sentence immediately caught her attention. If anything happens to me, trust the Carter boy. Victoria's hands began shaking. Carter boy. She turned the page. There was a photograph. Her father, a much younger Ethan, and another man standing between them, Richard Cole, the same investor who had funded her company. Victoria sat down. Ethan had known her father, much longer than she had known him. She rushed downstairs. Ethan! He appeared in the hallway. What happened? She held up the photograph. You knew my father. Ethan looked at it, then closed his eyes. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because your father asked me not to. Why? Ethan looked at her. Because he knew someone inside his company was betraying him. Victoria whispered. Who? Ethan didn't answer. Her phone suddenly rang. It was Daniel. Victoria put on speaker. Daniel's voice sounded urgent. Ethan, we found the person who accessed the accounts. Who? A long silence followed. Then Daniel said, It's someone inside the family. Victoria's face went pale. The secret that changed everything. Victoria stared at Ethan. Inside my family? Daniel continued. We traced the credentials. Whose? Another pause. Your brother's. Victoria felt the room disappear around her. My brother? Ethan looked shocked too. Daniel continued. But there's more. What? The access was authorized years ago. Ethan frowned. Years? Yes, before Victoria became CO. Victoria slowly sat down. Her brother, Jason, had always been the quiet one, the family member who stayed away from business, the one nobody suspected. Bring him here, Ethan said. 2 hours later, Jason arrived. Victoria stood across from him. Tell me the truth. Jason looked at Ethan, then back at his sister. You finally found out. Victoria's voice trembled. How long? Since Dad died. What did you know? Jason looked at Ethan. He saved the company. Victoria stared. What? Dad's company was collapsing because someone was stealing from it. Who? Jason swallowed. Marcus. Victoria's eyes widened. He worked for Dad? Yes. Ethan finally spoke. Marcus wasn't just your CFO. Jason nodded. He was part of the original fraud. Victoria covered her mouth. Then why did you hire him? I didn't, Ethan said. Your board did. Jason stepped forward. Dad suspected Marcus. Before he could expose him, Dad died. Victoria shook her head. You're saying Marcus caused everything? No, Ethan said. He didn't cause everything. Victoria looked at him. He took advantage of everything. Ethan explained that after Victoria's father's death, the company was nearly bankrupt. Ethan had secretly purchased its debt. Then he rebuilt the company's technology division through private funding. He stayed anonymous because he didn't want Victoria's family to know. Why protect us? Victoria asked. Ethan's voice softened. Because your father once protected me. Victoria looked confused. My father? When I was 23, I lost everything after my first business failed. He smiled sadly. Your father gave me a job. And you repaid him. Yes. Jason looked down. But there's something else. Ethan turned. What? Jason handed him another envelope. This came from Dad's lawyer. Ethan opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. He read it silently, then handed it to Victoria. She read the words. Ethan, if Victoria ever learns the truth, don't let her become what I became. Money is useful, but power without humility destroys everything. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. I treated you like you were beneath me. Ethan didn't respond. I thought you needed me. I did. She looked up. You did? Yes. For what? To remember why I started. Victoria's tears finally fell. I don't know how to fix this. You can't fix the past. Then what can I do? Tell the truth. The next morning, Victoria called an emergency board meeting. Every director attended. Marcus walked in confidently. You called? Victoria looked at him. Yes. She placed a folder on the table. You're fired. Marcus laughed. You can't fire me. Why? Because half the board supports me. Victoria looked around. Not anymore. She pressed a button. The screens turned on. Financial records appeared. Then audio evidence. Marcus's own voice discussing unauthorized transfers. The room fell silent. Marcus looked at Ethan. You. Ethan shook his head. No. Victoria stepped forward. I did this. Marcus stared at her. You don't know what you're doing. I finally do. Security escorted him out. But before leaving, Marcus turned toward Ethan. You think you've won? Ethan answered calmly. No. Marcus smiled. Good. Because this was never about winning. The doors closed. Victoria looked at Ethan. What happens now? Ethan glanced toward the windows. Now everyone finds out who really built this company. The reveal. 3 weeks later, Carter Dynamics held its annual investor conference. Thousands watched online. Financial journalists filled the auditorium. Victoria walked onto stage. The room became silent. She stood behind the microphone. For years, I allowed people to believe that I built this company alone. Cameras flashed. She continued. I was wrong. Behind her, the giant screen displayed a timeline. The company's first investment, its first rescue, its largest acquisition, its most important technological breakthrough. And beneath each event was the same name, Ethan Carter. The audience erupted. Victoria looked toward the front row. Ethan sat quietly. She continued. My husband was the person behind the scenes when I didn't know how close we were to failure. A journalist shouted. Was he secretly controlling the company? Victoria shook her head. No. Then why hide his identity? Because he believed I deserved a chance to become a leader without knowing someone was protecting me. Another reporter asked, why reveal him now? Victoria took a breath. Because I spent years believing power meant standing above everyone else. She looked directly at Ethan. I was wrong. The room became silent. I thought I was successful because people needed me. She paused. I learned I was successful because people believed in me. Ethan's expression softened. Victoria continued. And the person who believed in me before anyone else was the man I almost lost. The audience erupted into applause. Ethan stood. Victoria stepped down from the stage. They met halfway. She whispered, I don't expect you to forgive me. I know. I don't expect our marriage to go back to what it was. It can't. She nodded. But can we start with the truth? Ethan looked at her for several seconds. That's the first honest thing you've said to me in a long time. She smiled sadly. Is that a yes? No. Her smile disappeared. Not yet. Ethan continued. But it's not a no. Victoria nodded. For once, she didn't try to control the outcome. She simply accepted it. 6 months later, Carter Dynamics announced its biggest expansion ever. Victoria remained CEO, but the company now had a new chairman, Ethan Carter. At the press conference, a reporter asked him, Mr. Carter, after everything that happened, why didn't you take complete control of the company? Ethan smiled, because that was never the point. What was the point? He looked toward Victoria. To build something that could survive without either of us. Victoria smiled. The reporter turned toward her. Do you regret how you treated him? Victoria didn't hesitate. Every day. Why? Because I confuse being independent with being alone. The reporter asked, what's the biggest lesson you've learned? Victoria looked at Ethan, then faced the cameras. Never underestimate the person standing quietly beside you. Ethan smiled, but the story wasn't really about money. It wasn't about revenge. And it wasn't about proving who was more powerful. It was about what happens when pride makes you blind to the people who help you become who you are. Ethan could have destroyed Victoria. He had enough power to do it. Instead, he chose something harder. He walked away. He let the truth speak for itself. And when the world finally learned who had been behind the empire's success, Ethan didn't celebrate her downfall. He celebrated the fact that she had finally learned the difference between being powerful and being worthy of power. Years later, Victoria would still tell people about the night she signed those divorce papers. She would tell them she thought she was ending a marriage with a man who needed her. What she didn't understand that night was the truth. She wasn't leaving a weak man behind. She was letting go of the one person who had quietly believed in her before the world ever knew her name. And sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't watching someone lose everything. It's becoming so successful, so peaceful, and so complete that you no longer need revenge at all. Because in the end, Ethan didn't win by taking his wife's empire. He won by proving he never needed to. He had built his own,